Hello!
Hello!
How's it going, everybody? Welcome to Home Brewhaha, the newest endeavor we have going on with our Dungeons and Dragons content. We're going to be going over the basics of homebrew here in the beginning for people who are unfamiliar. But first, let's introduce ourselves. I'm Dakota, and I've been playing Dungeons and Dragons. I think I started way back in like 8th grade, and have been playing sporadically up until 3 or 4 years ago, at which point we've been playing very consistently, in some cases multiple campaigns at a time. And my co-host over here.
I'm Logan. I played D&D for the first time when I was a freshman in college with my roommates. We played 2 campaigns, one over each semester. And then I didn't play until probably 2015, which is probably the time Dakota started playing again, because we were playing together. And then we've been playing since then. It was 2015, 2016, so I actually think we've been playing for like 6 or 7 years.
Have we? Jesus.
I mean, I think it was like probably the summer of 2015, or maybe like the fall of 2015, or the summer of 2016. I don't know.
Yeah, I think. Oof, boy.
Because I've been bought our house in 2015, and then we started playing here before we got our ping pong table, because we were just playing up in the kitchen.
Yeah.
So it's been a bit of time that we have been going.
Yeah, that being said, our poison of choice is Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. That is what we're by far the most familiar with.
Yes.
I played like third or 3.5 back in the day, but way less familiar with that and way more familiar with 5th edition. So that is what we're really going to focus on here. As you can tell from my cool little title page, the home of Heroic Homebrew, 5th edition. I apologize for the images not being centralized. I did this in an HTML text editor and
I think it looks really good.
Did it in about half an hour in a panic. But I did it! Success! Alright. So, what are we going to discuss today? Well, I plan to do an itinerary. Boom! Don't expect a lot more slides. This is the only other slide I made.
Damn! Nice. Looks great. Love it.
Thanks. I made it myself. Nice mug. Oh, thank you, Heather. Does this mug look familiar?
That was Timmy that said that.
Oh, geez. His name is the same color as Heather's name in chat. Hi, Tim.
Really? On mine, hers is purple and his is like red.
On mine, his is also purple. Don't know why.
Weird. You are colorblind, though. I don't think that...
I don't think I'm mistaking red and purple, but...
I don't know what kind of colorblind you are.
Me either. Anyway.
It hasn't come up.
Delicious. So, what are we going to discuss today? Well, first we'll go over... I think the names actually appear different color depending on who's viewing them. Because, Heather, if you come in here and look, this is not the same blue... This is not blue like other names come up in Twitch chats. You see my little mouse? Yeah. See?
Why is his purple?
Oh, it just is. Anyway, that's my lovely wife off camera. Say hi to all the nice people.
Hi, nice people.
It's just us. Hi, Heather.
Yeah, it's just us and Tim.
There's only
Anyway.
one nice person here. It's neither of the two of us.
It's very true. What are we going to look at today? Well, first we're going to cover what is homebrew. Some people just don't know. If you don't know, I don't know why you're watching this, but we're going to explain it to you. Then we'll go over some different types of homebrew, different things you can kind of homebrew, stuff we personally use in our own games, and some other stuff we plan on covering in the future. And if you're interested in any of this, you can contact us and we'll tell you how at the end here. We'll make you suffer through us first. So, in the beginning, what is homebrew? Homebrew is just any content that doesn't come from an official... Oh, hold on, I got more of them here. an officially published Wizards of the Coast, in this case, book. Hold on, there's some more.
Several of these books. Also sometimes referred to as RAW, R-A-W, rules as written.
Yeah, so like these, some of these, they have some rules in them that if they're not in this book, these books, then it's probably homebrew. For example, if it's from, sorry, I forgot I had more published books. Ow, oh my foot. But if they're from not officially published books, or these were published but not published by Wizards of the Coast for Dungeons and Dragons.
God, we get it, nerd. You got a lot of books.
I got so many fucking books. But if they're in those unofficial books, then that's a homebrew content. Or they don't have to be published in a book. They could just be other things. But basically anything that's not official is homebrew. Pretty simple there. Types of homebrew. These are very broad. I'm not putting. I will do what I want with my books, woman.
Where's Chunk gonna sleep without the books on the floor?
Yeah. Oh, where is Chunk? I don't know where my dog is. But anyway, there are a few different types, or three basic breakdowns. There's the homebrew. There's removal, where you just take one of these rules as written, and you're like, this is a bad rule, and I'm just not using it. For example, and we'll get to this a little bit later, encumbrance rules, we don't really use those. Then there's alterations, where you take a rule as it exists and just make a tweak or an adjustment to it to make it fit your game better. We do that a lot with most things.
Stat blocks, monsters.
Monster stat blocks
would be kind of the most common thing.
It's a big
kind
one.
of just swap, change numbers, do some stuff to just tweak it to fit your needs.
Yeah. And honestly, I think probably just about every DM does this at some point, even if they're following a book dead on, just because sometimes numbers for stuff don't really make that much sense and you want something that fits your campaign a little bit better. And then there's addition, which is just you wholesale take something that it does not exist in the game and add it in. For example, we each run a D&D campaign that is completely homebrew. We take the world itself is an addition to the game. Do we really have any other things removed besides encumbrance? We'll get to talking to that, but there are a few things we skimp on quite a bit. Most of it's just logistics based.
Yeah.
But yeah, those are the three main types. It's taking something out, changing something that already exists in the written material, or adding something from completely outside the written material into the game. Mostly in the form of like new monsters or places. Honestly, if you have an NPC in your town at all that's not directly mentioned in a book, like if your people walk through town and encounter a city guard and say hi to him and you give that guard a name, that's a homebrew. You've created a character there, so everybody does it. It just depends to the degree you're going to do it. Like all of the guards in Logan's campaign, I think their name is, Todd?
Some of them, yeah. I mean, it happens a lot.
Most of the guards, I believe, we've encountered.
Yeah. Todd's just a really common name in my campaign.
Yeah.
They're not made up. They're scheduled guards that you were supposed to meet when you met them.
I see. So
Todd, and a lot of Todds go into guarding. It's just a, chicken or egg situation. Did they become guards because their name is Todd?
Were they destined to become guards once they were named
Todd?
Todd?
Todds because they're guards. Maybe Todd is just a nickname for a guard. I don't know.
Like a Bobby.
I do know, but
yeah. You'll never tell. I really should move my outline. Do it right now. Alright, so let's go over a few of the homebrew rules we use in our campaigns. 1. Encumbrance. Your character can only carry so much weight. I could actually pull out the handy dandy Dungeon Master's Guide here and look up the rules for it.
Show us the math for what it actually is.
I have so many books here that it would take me so long to do it.
You know what? I'll pull it up. I'll pull it up on the internet.
Okay, we'll let the internet do it because, oh my god, I've got so many fucking books. And here's the sad thing. This is not nearly all the books I've published for 5th edition. I'm missing several of the new ones. I don't even know where here they go over it. Adventures cover. Yeah.
This is just the variant rule, but this one is if you are carrying weight in excess of 5 times your strength score. Which, so let's assume we're talking about a strong character or an average character, 10. That's 50 pounds.
And a suit of plate armor weighs 45 pounds, I believe?
Plate armor, yeah, but like if you, let's say your strength score is 10, you probably are wearing what? Leather
Yeah,
armor?
if you're just wearing standard
like
leather
that.
armor, which is what your average...
Leather armor weighs 10 pounds.
So
that's a fifth of
a fifth of
20%.
all the things you could carry. That's
everything you can carry.
That's just the armor. You still have, your weapons, a bow, your arrows.
Yeah, and if you're carrying in excess of that, so like you could carry 49 pounds and nothing changes, but if you go 51 pounds, your movement speed now drops by 10 feet, which is pretty huge, especially if you're like a dwarf or a halfling or something.
Yeah,
that's tough.
So how, even at max strength, it's only 100 pounds. Yeah, and if you think about
it's not a lot.
If your characters are trekking through the wilderness, they're carrying a whole campsite on their back.
Yeah, because you need your bedrolls, your
Tents if you've
rations
got
are very
them,
heavy.
Rations, all your cooking supplies, any tools for armor upkeep and stuff
Basically,
like that.
If you've ever played Skyrim or any RPG, and you've been looting stuff in a place, and you're like, "Oh, I'm encumbered all of a sudden," like that's what it is for D&D, except it's much quicker. And so basically, which everyone I think should do, the moment you start playing an RPG game, you have to check your inventory to see if there's a carry space, and if there is, you go download a mod to remove that carry space, because it just makes the game less fun.
Yeah, there's just less you can do. So we ignore encumbrance for the most part, just because it's a lot of logistics to keep track of. Now, obviously, like if the character's like, "Oh, I pick up this 500-pound whatever and carry it around with me. This is my new boulder." No, you can't do that. I'd say no. But if your character's like, you know what, I'm gonna go ahead and buy an extra quiver of arrows just to, have. We're gonna be gone for a while. Like, well, that quiver of arrows weighs 2.5 pounds, and you're at your weight limit, so now your speed is like, no. Why do that?
Yeah.
Speaking
and
of
that's
which,
not to say you can't ever use encumbrance rules, and like I think if your group wanted to use them, and your campaign was like based on long distance trekking or surviving, away from civilization for a long time, it could be at least interesting. It could add a facet to it, but I definitely think it's something that is more often than not just an annoyance. And it's, if you wanted to use it, I would discuss it with your group pretty thoroughly. Be like, hey, just so you know, show them the examples of like, you're encumbered with this much stuff.
Yeah, it's a survival. If you're running a survivalist style thing, that's definitely something you can do, and that's a campaign style that would definitely support it. But if you're not, it's just logistics that slogs you down. Same way with like ammunition. Basic crossbow bolts and arrows are, a silver a dozen, and your characters should just, I'm assuming they are prepared with them, and I'm assuming if you have a ranger, even if they're not prepared with them, that they can make some arrows of their own. It's not
or just
a huge...
acquire them from people you fight. You fight a lot of people who probably have arrows or bolts on them.
Yeah.
And so
like keeping track of that is tedious, and also like what scenario you're looking for. Your character's never going to run out, because once they realize they're getting low, they're just going to hold up the session in order to acquire more arrows. It's not like you're going to be a situation like, oh, you reach back and you're out of ammunition suddenly. It's not. It'd be cool if it built towards something like that, but that's not how people work. You see your car's on half a tank of gas, and you don't just like, you're like, well, I know how much gas I have and I should get more gas. It's not just, well, I'm going to drive till I'm out of gas and then hope it's not an inopportune time.
You would not
Unless
let
you're my
mom.
sister, in which case that's exactly what you do.
Yeah.
So yeah, we just ignore encumbrance for the most part, and ammunition, unless it's like magical ammunition, obviously. Potions are typically an action to imbibe a potion yourself, which seems... Most potions aren't that effective. Like, healing potions aren't that good, honestly. So spending your full action to drink a healing potion means you're probably going to take more damage this turn because you can't do anything else really, and then just have wasted the potion. That
Yeah.
feels bad.
Yeah, and also I think the book, and maybe I'm misremembering this, but I think the book even describes health potions as being quite small. Like they're like little vials. Or, you know, it's not a huge flask of potions, something you would have to chug in order to
You're
to
not
drink. It's
slamming a
like,
40 of healing potion.
yeah, it's like a little vial of medicine. You know, you're taking a little shot.
Yeah. So, we rule that taking a potion is a bonus action.
Yourself.
Yeah. And if it's like a potion of Dragon's Breath or something that like gives you the action to cast the thing, yeah, then you use your action to use the thing. But just like to take a potion yourself, bonus action, quick and easy, plus a lot of classes don't really have anything they can do with a bonus action, so it makes their action economy feel more useful. Like a lot of caster classes don't really have a ton they can do with a bonus action. To be honest, there are only a handful of classes that really consistently use a bonus action, so giving them something else they can do with that action economy is very nice. But if you're giving a potion to somebody else, especially somebody who's unconscious, we say that's a full action because there's a little more resistance, a little more struggling, a little more, fumbling involved in that process. It shouldn't take the same amount of time to pop a cork and drink a potion yourself as it does to go over to someone unconscious on the ground, tilt their head back, open the potion, pour it down their throat, and give it to them. Those aren't really equivalent. So we do bonus action healing for any potions really.
Yeah.
And I just think that just makes the action economy a little bit cleaner. And actually, I don't know if that's official because I think in one of Matt Mercer's books, it might be the Tal'Dorei campaign guide, there's actually a feat for it that at a certain level, or if you choose to take the feat, you can take potions as a bonus action. So it might be official content somewhere in the bylines at this point, but we've been doing it since before that book existed, so.
Yeah.
Then also, and this one's a little more, I don't want to say contentious, but a little
It might be controversial.
A little more controversial probably for how we handle our critical hits in game. So in earlier editions of Dungeons & Dragons, different weapons had different critical hit ranges that you'd roll to do their critical hit, and then once you got the critical hit roll, you'd have to roll again to see if you'd hit to confirm the critical. Well, 5th edition did away with all that. All weapons just crit on a 20, and once you've rolled that 20, you just deal, you double the dice, your weapon's damage dice. I mean, that's pretty good. But considering you'll only crit 5% of the time, and there's no, unless you're like one specific barbarian subclass or one specific fighter subclass, are the only ones that can really alter the critical chance or damage. And doubling your weapon dice sometimes is less than maximum damage on that weapon. If you crit with a greatsword and then roll 2 1s and then you double that to 4 damage, that's less than average damage for a greatsword hit. So when you have this big critical hit that you had a very low chance of getting, and then you roll like bad, it feels really bad to just do such an ineffective critical hit. So what we do is when you land a critical hit, you roll damage like normal, and then you take whatever the maximum you could have rolled on the die and add that number. So it's essentially like rolling the dice again and getting maximum damage. That way your critical hit will always deal more damage than a non-critical hit. we apply this to players and to enemies.
Yeah, that's the important distinction, I think, because obviously if you just apply it to players, it obviously it's just better, and it makes crits feel better for your players. And if you don't apply it to monsters, it really makes crits feel better for your players. But if your group agrees to it and you apply it to monsters as well, it makes crits really hurt against players.
Yeah. This does lead to a position of sometimes you'll inadvertently one-shot a player, which has happened
especially
before.
At lower levels.
Yeah. So
which doesn't feel as good.
So if you apply this critical hit rule, you might wait a few levels to apply it. You might not apply it to level 1 characters because you can just outright kill somebody with a crit. But all in all, I think it's a pretty good rule, especially because 5th edition has so few ways of altering your critical hit stats and damage. I'm starting to lose frames. Crazy. Oh no, I'm going to feel real bad if this recording's unusable.
Oh no.
It's
okay to me. I'm mostly just watching Lana in my camera.
Just a second. I'm not losing a bunch, but I don't know what's going on. It might be Steam trying to install updates for things. Knock it off, Steam. I'll tell you when I want to update these things.
I decide when we update.
Okay, sorry about that. So yeah, critical hits. Some classes would have a better chance of this. Like a champion fighter can eventually crit on like a 17. But that becomes really what that character's put all their points into at that point. At that point, let them have it. And some classes do.
Well, plus, it's not. There's one glaring exception, but most of the time, it's not that huge of a damage increase. It's plus, let's say the fighter, starts critting on 17s. They're typically using a weapon that's 1d8, 1d12, so an extra 8 to 12 damage. Yeah, I mean, it's good for sure. But at that level, that's not a fight-changing amount of damage. Obviously, the glaring exception of that is high-level rogues, which, admittedly, is pretty extreme.
No, and also paladins who can divine smite once they've gotten a crit.
Yeah.
And if you're having a consistent issue with that, then make exceptions to your homebrew. Say, okay, well, if paladins divine smite, they have to re-roll the damage. They don't just get the maximum. And if rogues sneak attack, roll the damage, they don't just get the maximum. And in a lot of cases, that's fine, because sneak attack from a rogue at level 10, 6d6, and you max that out, that's 2 fireballs worth of damage on somebody with 1 poke is really, really a lot. So nerfing that, seems perfectly fine. And that's another thing about homebrews in general is you might institute one and realize, oh, this is not working at all the way I wanted it to. Just be open and talk to your players. And if you're a player, talk to your DM about it, and feel free to make adjustments to them. Nothing's really set in stone. It's your game at the end of the day.
Yeah. The whole point is just to make sure everyone's having a good time.
Yeah.
And the big part of why we made this critical hit rule is because it felt, in our experience, and we did this pretty early on, in our experience, it felt like a lot of the times when our players were critting, they were rolling a 1 or a 2 on their damage die. And then it's like, okay, then your crit doesn't feel good at all. And in fact, it makes your crit feel worse than a regular hit, because you're like, oh, yay, I crit, this is really exciting. I rolled a 1. Yep. So I actually did 5 damage on my crit, so that doesn't feel good.
And it feels bad as a DM trying to narrate a fight when your player does a critical hit and you're describing this critical hit and then they roll damage and you're like, okay, well actually, instead of burying this knife in their eye, you missed and pierced their ear,
Yeah. but
it
it looks
just
really good.
it takes a lot of the
Critically
oomph
succeeded.
out of what should be a pretty heroic thing. And also, when your players get crit and take a sudden big chunk of damage they weren't expecting, it can really turn a fight and really get your players like on the edge of their seats.
Yeah.
Which, is nice.
Yeah.
Let's see. Is there any other rules we use
We have a
in general?
couple. One that comes to mind for me that I really noticed because I played that Solasta game is we ignore the rule where if you cast a spell of a spell slot higher than a cantrip, like a first level or higher spell, you then can only cast a cantrip even if you cast a bonus action spell. Like if you cast Misty Step, which is a second level spell, your action then can only be a cantrip. We ignore this, which, obviously that's another sort of like kind of up to you whether you want to do that or not, because we apply it both to the players and to
if your players
monsters.
are like min-maxing really hard, that can be really bad. But you know your players well enough to decide if that's okay.
Yeah. But yeah, we just found that it just feels more fun to be able to, because to be honest, most bonus action spells really are not fight-changing spells. I mean, there's Misty Step that I can think of. I mean, there's like Spiritual Weapon.
It's like Thunder Step or whatever, which is just Misty Step.
I mean, there are some bonus action spells that are higher level that do pretty cool stuff. And so, yeah, you might run into an issue where your players are popping a pretty good high-level bonus action spell and then turning around and casting Fire Storm or something.
Now, I will say one thing. If this rule makes all of your players suddenly dip into Sorcerer for the... what is it? Hastened casting meta magic or whatever?
Yeah, Quicken Spell,
Quicken
I think
Spell?
is what it's called.
Then you shut them down.
Yeah, you do have to, because that was something else that we did it for, is because our sorcerer was doing the Quicken Spell, using her sorcery points to fireball, and then wanted to do another fireball, which we all at the table agreed should be allowed. We think that's cool. Double fireball, bam, bam.
Now, that being
like
said, if it became an issue where every fight was ending in one turn because of that, we would change that.
Yeah.
But that just hadn't... Luckily, our player that was playing a sorcerer was not...
Is basically a pacifist, so... When
a
we
pacifist,
play Among Us, she refuses to murder anyone.
She's a pacifist, a pyromaniac, and not a min-maxer in any way.
Yeah.
So, it was fine.
Not an issue for us.
But I could see that becoming an issue for other people. That also affects, like, it's really big for paladins whose smites are a bonus action to cast.
Yeah.
Then being able to use their action to cast some sort of buff spell and then still have a smite, in case they're not within range to attack or something, gives...
Yeah. Similar to the crit rule that we use, certain classes or subclasses can really take advantage of these rules, in which case you kind of just have to be like, hey, let's cool it, man.
Yeah, because...
Unless you throw a paladin right back at somebody, and you're like, all right, you guys have been abusing this homebrew rule, and now you're fighting 7 paladins.
Yeah, and here's the thing. As a DM, you can always win a fight if you choose to. Like, that's not...
Yeah.
You make the rules. But you want it to just be enjoyable for everybody involved. And you don't want to throw a bunch of super powerful stuff against your one, min-maxing munchkin, only to have your players that are playing mostly for the role-playing just get completely slaughtered immediately in combat. So it's a delicate balancing act, but as long as you're openly communicating with your party about how you want to handle stuff, that should be fine.
Yep. Another rule that we use that I just remembered, we actually use a couple different ones that relate to your players being knocked down or knocked unconscious. The first one is because our party is very large and frequently has several good healers who have a lot of spells that can quickly bring people back into a fight. What we instituted is when you get knocked unconscious in a fight, when you drop to 0 hit points, when you're brought back up, you gain 1 point of exhaustion. And this stacks until you clear your exhaustion by long resting. So if a player gets knocked down, because the reason we implemented this, like I said, our party is really big. We have like between 6 and 7, sometimes 8 players, actual player characters on any given night. We found that it was, because many of our players are also kind of math nerds. They know that it is very inefficient a lot of times to expend a healing spell until somebody is unconscious. Because if you're at like 10 hit points, and you could heal somebody for like 8, but they're getting hit for 25 damage a turn, let's just wait, and then that takes up the action economy for the next turn. So, but yeah, basically we just decided, okay, well, there has to be some sort of benefit to knocking the players unconscious without outright killing them every time they do it to the monsters.
Because your options are either to, once the player's knocked out, immediately have the mobs kill them, which doesn't feel great for anyone involved.
Especially for low-level parties that don't immediately have resurrection stuff, or doing it more than once is really expensive and hard to acquire for them.
But D&D has such ample ways to heal people, especially like the healing spirit spell. You just leave it on top of somebody, they get up, hit somebody, take a hit, go down at the start of the caster's turn, they get back up, and then they can just keep going. That's the exhaustion is good because the first level of exhaustion isn't crippling in a fight.
Yeah, because I think it's ability checks?
It's ability checks. Unless you're like actively trying to grapple somebody, you'll just have disadvantage on ability checks. Not a big deal. And you should be alright.
Love the exhaustion rules because I forget what the stages are. But yeah, it starts stacking up and starts being very...
I'm starting to drop a lot of
frames
here.
Even at 2 exhaustion, your speed is halved, which could be a big deal in a fight. But they have to get knocked down 3 times and brought back up before they have disadvantage on attack rolls and saving throws.
And at that point, they've taken their licks and
they've taken a beating. And I think we like this too because it kind of gives a more in-fight representation of you actually taking damage. Like you're getting beat up in this fight. And rules is written, there's really nothing that distinguishes a player who's been knocked down 10 times in a fight and has 1 hit point over and over again versus a player at max health who hasn't taken a single hit.
Yeah, mechanically they are exactly as capable of fighting.
So this was one way that we'd like to kind of make getting knocked down in fights meaningful without having to resort to, okay, well, you get knocked down, and then the next monster on the list says, oh, that person's knocked down, I need to go stab them in the throat.
Yeah, so that's a good little balancing act there. And once again, it's probably unnecessary on a smaller party.
Yeah. And then this is another, going along with that, we also do, we have resurrection checks, which... rules is written do not. You just cast your resurrection spell and it works. Mm-hmm. And this one is obviously another, I would say probably the most important one to talk with your players about whether they want this or not. I think we've all agreed that it makes dying for your character much more impactful and meaningful, and keeps your players from just like wantonly throwing themselves at danger. But your players might not want that. Your players might want to be like, no, I don't want any chance that my character can permanently die. I've spent a lot of time working on their background. I'm very invested emotionally in them. I don't want them to die. And that's totally fine.
Yeah. 5th edition makes it incredibly easy to bring somebody back from the dead. So if you're playing a campaign that is less centered on the characters like anime style, you're following this group of people, and more centered on the world esque, like Game of Thrones or Lord of the Rings, I guess, is kind of centered on the characters, but there's a big overarching world thing going on that you're following, and if something happens to one character, they get Boromir'd. It's not the end of your campaign.
Yeah.
So it depends, and as a DM, you have to decide with your players what kind of campaign you want to run. You want to run more. It sounds demeaning when I call it anime style, but when I say anime style, I'm just referring to focusing on a small
Everyone
group
knows
of
what you
main
mean, though,
characters.
so,
You know,
makes sense.
and
We
or-
like anime. We're
Yeah.
not dissing anime.
No, I'm sure I've got something. I've got a Gurren Lagann figure, but it's behind my green screen.
I have a One Punch Man poster in my basement.
Sure.
It covers my electrical box.
Yes. I should get one of those for my electrical box. But aside, yeah, so that's another thing you have to decide what kind of game you're running with your players. And honestly, we run campaigns, we switch off and on campaign, and the campaign I run is a lot more, I would say, anime style, focusing on these characters being very important people. And the campaign he runs is much more like a Western style game or Western style show where it's focused on the world itself, and these characters are players on that stage.
Yeah.
And I think we enjoy the different change of paces, but it's something that if I suddenly wanted to institute that when your characters are dead, they're perma-dead, that's something I would want to talk with them about.
Yeah. Yeah. Pretty big deal, especially considering, like I said, some players really spend a lot of time and emotional resources on their characters,
No,
and you don't want to just suddenly take that away from them.
No, some people spend no time on their characters' backgrounds and have an incredibly heavy emotional investment in them for almost no reason, besides maybe a character's name. And I would feel really bad if something happened.
Yeah. Yeah. Who would do that?
Yeah.
Crazy.
Who knows? But I'm sure there are players like that out there somewhere.
Yeah. Who knows?
I'm trying to think of anything else we exactly cover. As
Other
far as
stuff that we just straight up homebrew, like rules wise.
there are tons of creatures. I've thrown
Lots of creatures.
the vast majority of creatures I throw at your homebrew because you're obviously familiar with the monster manual. So to keep the game kind of fresh and exciting for you, I like to homebrew quite a bit of stuff, so you're not like, oh, I've seen this before. Plus, I have my mind sees a monster, it's like, you know what would make this better? Let me just get my hands in this and just
let's tweak a little bit.
Yeah.
Let's do a little bit of tweaking. Yeah, I know we use other rules that we probably don't even think about, but we're just stuff that we do.
Character upkeep. A character should, when they're in town, spend a certain amount of gold a day to upkeep their lifestyle. Lifestyle depends on their background and class, anywhere from 1 copper piece if you're a squalid monk, and 10 gold pieces, I think, if you're an aristocrat. But we don't bother keeping track of that stuff. Once again, most logistic stuff.
Yeah, we really do away with almost all logistics. I feel like every once in a while we'll mention costs of things, but that's mostly during the course of the players wanting to role play with a tavern keeper, or if they happen to stay somewhere and they're talking to the person that's letting them sleep in their house, the players will oftentimes offer to pay for their lodgings or whatever. So we really only discuss it in terms of role playing,
or if they want to get
moment.
If they want to get lodgings for a month, a long-term thing. But most, again, I love logistics, but I like to do away with it a lot because when you have as many people as we do, boy, can it slow a game down.
Yeah.
So
when you have to spend minimum 10 minutes, people going, all right, how much gold do you have? Well, I've got this, and then it's okay, well, how much can we take from the actually I'm going to put in 12 silver from my personal funds.
Our druid has negative money because he spent every penny he had on cinnamon, so we have to now take that into account.
That's one way that I, as a player, get around ever keeping track of money, is that all of my characters don't want to have any money and have no concept of budgeting, and therefore they see something and they purchase it immediately with all the money that they have. So for you players out there, that's a little trick to never be put in charge of the party loot, because that is the most boring logistics of all, in my opinion. That's why we have the doctor and the engineer take care of that for us.
It's true. Personally, my strategy for not keeping a ton of track of my goals, anytime a party member asks me about my goals, I just lie. And
It's also a good strategy.
it's because actually sometimes not even a lie, because sometimes I truly don't know how much gold I have. But as a rogue, I can just say, no, I lost my wallet.
Shit's crazy.
No, it happens. Happens to the best of us. Let's see. I think that just about covers rules I can think of that we use.
Yeah, like for
Homebrew.
just kind of, running the game. Obviously, like Dakota said, we homebrew plenty of monsters and items and things like that, which we could go into a bit later.
The other thing I was going to mention is I like to include all the races available in the game, because I want to give players all the options for things. But I do change their background and lore quite a bit to fit the world in a way, just so to keep the canon kind of knit tight.
Yeah.
So I do adapt those things. I mean, dwarves are always all still Scottish. They just are. That's just, you can't help that. That can't be
That's
changed.
the way it is.
But things like, I'm trying to think of one thing I did in particular. One of our players wanted to play Kitsune, which was a race from earlier editions. So we homebrewed a kind of stat for them, and we made them, we made beast folk a type of race that is just like anthropomorphic people, and they're, we just Mist of Pandaria'd them basically, where they are from some, well, you don't need to hear the background of my campaign, but anyway, we just took some stuff that didn't exist in this canon and kind of combined it with some stuff that did exist to put together a kind of homebrew setting. And feel free to do that. Players, work with your players, because you want everyone to be enjoying themselves here. All right. So the one thing I wanted to cover next before we go ahead and call it here is, what are we going to cover here in the future? What is the future of Home Brewhaha? Well, a couple things. One is I will figure out how to use HTML text editing, and I will center my damn images.
It's going to be beautiful. You guys aren't even prepared.
I certainly am not. The second, there's so much to cover. Every single facet of the game can have a dozen homebrews of it. Like, if we're just talking monsters here, I have two of these books, which every page is a monster. So hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of monsters. And that's just monsters. Like, then I've got another one here that's, hey, guess what? You like spells? Hundreds of spells. So, and that's just two small facets of the overall game. There's tons of stuff we can cover. So, we haven't quite decided in what order we're going to cover stuff, but here's some stuff I do want to see us talk about in the future. New feats. I think the base feats in D&D are kind of lacking, especially after playing some Pathfinder recently. I think there's a lot of cool stuff you could do with feats as options for your players that we want to explore. Races. There are 36, I think, playable races in the newest canon of D&D. But there's always room for more, and there are existing creatures in the game that there's no reason they couldn't be a playable race. So, do take a look at some of those. Classes. My favorite thing to brew in the game is new classes and subclasses for existing classes and hybrid classes. There's a really neat mechanic in older editions of Pathfinder that 5th edition doesn't have that I would like to brew a version of, where essentially you take two classes and kind of take a couple levels in each and then blend them together to make separate, new, what are they called? I forget the name of them, but they're really cool super classes. God, I wish I could remember what they're called now. I sound like a dummy. Anyway, magical items. I love brewing magical items more than anything. Yeah. Changes to existing monsters. If you've watched Wizarding Wednesday, you've already heard us talk about a bunch of changes to existing monsters. But we could do more. But magical items, just about every magical item I give my party is homebrewed in some way. I love doing it. Everything from giving our druid just access to rolling on the wild magic table whenever he wants, to giving our ranger a mechanized familiar that can distribute potions to people. Giving you gave our monk fist weapons, which aren't even a thing in 5th edition.
Oh yeah, that's true, because he really wanted brass knuckles, which, as far as I could find, they just don't exist, really. So, we did that.
Yeah, just gave him some. It can be something as simple as that, or something as complicated as whole new relics and like you guys have a magical ship now that can do all sorts of crazy stuff. Items galore. So we're going to talk about some more homebrew next Wednesday at 5:30 Central Time. That's when we start. Hopefully on time this time. And also I'm going to make some production value changes to this thing as we get going, like a logo at some point in the future. This is episode 1. I plan on doing more. Also, I'm going to start recording these locally, I guess, because my bitrate is just tanking. I hope this video is good enough to be pulled up and put on YouTube. I should have recorded locally, but that's
the only thing that would drop frames is our faces, which nobody really cares about.
Yeah, as long as the audio doesn't drop, I guess we're okay. So I guess in closing here, homebrew's amazing. We're amazing at it, and you should watch us talk about it. Pretty simple. Go ahead, and if you're interested in this, we'll be doing Home Brewhaha every Wednesday, and if this, gets some traction, we might do some more Home Brewhaha stuff, and take requests for things you'd like to see, or in fact, if you've homebrewed something yourself, we might feature it, do an episode where we feature submissions. So go ahead and follow me on twitch.tv/solo_crusader. Had to throw the underscore in there because somebody stole my name. But and that's where I stream usually 3 or 4 times a week, and one of which being our Wizarding Wednesday stream. Also, I'm posting all of these Home Brewhahas up on YouTube in case you missed one, want to get back into the backlog, or want to leave any comments about how great we are. Feel free to do it there. If you need me to know how great I am right now and you can't wait for me to check the comments on YouTube, we also have a Discord channel that is linked on the YouTube and on Twitch, where you can hop in and tell us how great we are right now. Or, anything else you want to talk about, I suppose. Let's see. I think that just about handles us for tonight. Is there any... Oh, I am so great. Thank you very much. Yeah, the Twitch chat is also a good place to tell me I'm great. I do appreciate that. Is there anything else we need to cover before we call it an evening?
Got all the info I wanted to get out there, I think.
Okay. Is there... Do you want to talk about your TFT streams? Get some viewers.
Oh yeah, I'll plug my channel. I'm Raviska, which you can follow me on Twitch if you'd like. I don't really stream, at least with any regularity at all. Mostly just if I'm bored and my wife is at work, and she wants me to entertain her. Mostly that will be Teamfight Tactics. But coming up in just over a week, Warhammer 3 will be released, which I am super fucking hyped for. And so I'll be playing that pretty much nonstop for for a few days, and I might stream that. I don't know if my wife wants me to and she's bored at work, or if anyone else would just like to watch me play it. I might do it. We'll see. I don't know.
Really get in on you with that, but we'll talk about off stream. Anyway, all right, guys. Everyone have a wonderful evening, and we will see you. I will see you tomorrow for hopefully some Magic the Gathering, and we will see you together next Wednesday. Bye-bye, folks.
Bye, everybody.